All right, Chaz, let's get right to it. And as we approach the start of a new season for the Reds, let's go back first to the way last season ended. 2 games against the Dodgers in Los Angeles, and the Reds were done. But when you look back at that series, let's not forget the Reds scored 9 runs across those 2 games. And most of the time in the regular season, if the Reds score 4 or 5 runs a game, they won most of those games, if not a lot of those games. But in Los Angeles, they were outpitched by the Dodgers. And one of the most glaring statistics that I looked at when I went back to that series, from the series, the Reds' 2 playoff games, the stat that stands out is that Zach Littell led the Reds in those 2 games in innings pitched. Hunter Green started game 1, didn't have his best, and the Reds weren't able to show their best in game 2, in part because of what it took down the stretch just to get into the playoffs. So we know it. It's universal. Pitching wins in the postseason. So, Chaz, when Nick Krall and Brad Metter had one of those first offseason conversations, what do you think they said about the Reds' rotation as a whole across the entire 2025 season? Where did that conversation start when they decided or talked about what they have?
They're building around pitching for a reason, and it's a reason why they've invested so much in their pitching development apparatus and why they've handed a lot of organizational responsibility to Derek Johnson and why they used all these high draft picks on pitching and why they traded Jonathan India for a pitcher. And what I always like to say is the whole reason they're all showing up is that they think one of these days they're going to show up for that big series against a team like the Dodgers and outpitch them. That didn't happen in LA in 2025. And we can talk about the reasons why. But a big thing that a lot of people talk about, not that the Reds should have been favored against the Dodgers or anywhere close to that, but something you hear a lot was, man, we didn't get to give him our best shot because Lodolo had to pitch out of the bullpen because he was needed in the bullpen on game 162 and Abbott didn't pitch. And then you got Burns and Louder coming in. And so when you have conversations about the Reds' upside, it starts with Ellie and with the starting pitching.
Yeah, it always comes back to started pitching. By the way, you look outstanding in the sunshine in Arizona. If you're on the YouTube, you can see that. The Chaz is working and working some more, but taking advantage of being outside. But you're right. I think that's one of the takeaways from the postseason. And something you wrote about the entire season is that the Reds got where they got without showing their best. And then that was highlighted in the postseason when you couldn't run out your best arms and get them in the best possible situations. Hunter Green was their hope. That was their best bullet. But when he didn't have it in game 1, it all went downhill from there from a pitching standpoint. And the Dodgers, on the other hand, rode Blake Snell and Yoshinobu Yamamoto to the series win in 2 games against the Reds. And that's how it ended. But we're going to look forward on this show. Welcome to Power Stacks, proud members of the Growler Podcast Network. Coming up on the show this week, this is where it starts. It is a show that is a deep dive on the makeup of the Reds' 2026 rotation. And along the way, we'll tell some stories and hear from some players in the Reds clubhouse. But we also have the story of what Terry Francona told Nick Lodolo about the World Baseball Classic. Also, in the spirit of the Olympics, who makes the pitching podium? In the National League Central, we award gold, silver, and bronze. And we bring back, if you remember this, Chaz, we bring back Rate the Road Trip, as Chaz is currently living out of a suitcase for 6 weeks in spring training in Arizona. Feels like
I'm unpacked. I resent that.
It feels like a good time to talk about the road and Chaz and life on the road. So we're going to do that. I'm glad you're unpacked, though. Let's start with the leadoff spot. Many different directions that a front office could take, the Reds front office could take to try to improve their team when the offseason started. What were some of those potential pathways for the Reds, as Nick Krall and Brad Metter saw it, when it came to the offseason, addressing team needs and how it pertained to the starting rotation? Let's start there.
they were looking for offensive help all offseason. And you can argue to the extent to which the Reds did end up getting that offensive help. Now I think Eugenio Suarez was a very, very good move. And I like the lineup right now when I look at it on paper. But back on October 1st, when you had your first conversation about the Reds, where they're at, and their offseason, it all started with, should they trade a bat for an arm? That was, as to borrow a Bengals term, line
An
one.
arm for a bat.
Yes, sorry. Trading
Yes.
an arm for a bat. That was, to use a Bengals term, I think Frank Pollock said, line 1A of the offseason. With Frank Pollock, he was talking about the offensive line at the time. Should they trade one of Green, Lodolo, Abbott, Burns, Louder, Singer, Williamson, etc., for that left fielder that they were always looking for? And the decision they made, and what I heard from basically November 1st on, was no. The Reds wanted to keep this rotation together. And they wanted to keep it together for a reason, because as we talked about earlier, they believe in the power of what that upside can mean in a potential series in October.
Yeah. So that's very clearly there's depth there in the rotation that the Reds haven't had in the past, and we're going to examine that depth in terms of injuries last season, guys who are back this year. But there are many keen observations you can make about the Reds rotation if you just base it on the top end guys that are coming back in addition to the depth. And so as you start this year, Zach Littell is gone. Nick Martinez is gone. How do you view the group? How is that group being viewed right now in Arizona as they start to get loose?
I don't want to make this about, Martinez and Littell, because those are two nice pitchers, but they weren't the core of what the Reds rotation was and was supposed to be in 2025. Martinez was a guy who I think in an ideal world was in the bullpen full-time last year. Littell was a guy they got because a couple guys were banged up, Hunter Green at the time, Chase Burns, they were managing his innings. The core of the rotation is the core they have now, and they made a very conscious choice to keep this core together. And just to buzz through them real quick, I mean, the line I used is you start with 2 All-Americans and an All-Star, because Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo, Team USA, wanted both of them. Andrew Abbott's an All-Star who finished 8th in Cy Young voting last year. I think, honestly, Chase Burns is just as talented as Hunter Green. That's one of the Reds' takes I'm putting my hat in the ring for. Rhett Louder, what can you even say about Rhett? What he did in 24, a top 10 pick, a guy they drafted to be a top 1 or 2 of the rotation piece. And then Brandon Williamson, or I forgot Brady Singer, the guy they got to make 32 starts because of how valuable having that tool in your toolbox is when you construct your rotation. And Brady's one of the few guys who can do that anymore. And then Williamson, who's sneaky interesting. So this is a good rotation. They felt like it was exactly as deep as it should be. They didn't want to break it up, and they really like what they have. And I thought Emilio Pagan made the point well. Here's Reds closer veteran Emilio Pagan talking about his view of the Reds rotation.
Yeah, I think across the board in Major League Baseball, you have to value starting pitching. Even we talked about the Dodgers. We look at the Dodgers. We're to argue what won them the World Series last year in the run through the playoffs. Like, they had big swings offensively and stuff, but it was, their rotation. Those guys who were, starting games, finishing games, coming out of the bullpen, throwing on short rest, throwing on no rest with what Yamamoto did, which was incredible. We've got one of the best group of starting pitchers in baseball in our organization, and I don't think that's something we should shy away from. Like, our guys could go out and be the best rotation in the game. So, it's our job to help them in any way we can as veteran guys and as an organization, as coaching staff, to get them to where they can take us. Starting pitching wins. It affects everything. If you get good starting pitching, it helps the bullpen out. Obviously, you're in game, so it helps the offense out where they don't feel like, we have to make this huge comeback. In it, a couple big swings here or there, a couple good at-bats, and we win the game. It just takes the pressure off everybody. And so the group of guys we've got, really like 1 through 7 or 8, are all super, super talented guys. And they've got a chance to carry this team and this franchise for a long time. So we're definitely going to lean on them. Tito did last year, and he's going to again. And they're going to be good.
The only thing with these guys is health, because I don't know that you could aside if you take health out, if you play MLB The Show and turn the injury settings off, like there's no debate, there's no argument about how good Green, Lodolo, not Singer because he'll always be healthy, but Green, Lodolo, Louder, Burns are. Like, you know exactly what you have. And I forgot Abbott. You know exactly what you have. And it's something you can truly build around. And as we talk about bench battles and lineup construction, like just know that all of that is supplementary, peripheral to the core of what this team is. And that's a team with an elite rotation.
Well, we know this. Nothing is wasted. No experience in the game or in life is wasted. And so you can look back at the 2 games against the Dodgers and say the Reds were outpitched, the Reds lost, they got to the postseason, it went away fast, all those things. But you spoke with Hunter Green and on the last show about what he took away from that game and that experience against the Dodgers. And that layer of experience on a player like Hunter Green is important. You already mentioned this. When things started to fall apart in Game 2 after Zach Littell left the game, Nick Lodolo came out of the bullpen, pitched in that game. Chase Burns out of the bullpen, pitched in that game. That's a level and a layer of experience that you can add on to young pitchers Chase Burns and Nick Lodolo as they head into this season. So we know what Green said about the experience and how he uses that moving forward. What did Lodolo say about the staff, as it played into the playoff series against the Dodgers, what that did for him, how that serves as a starting point for Lodolo and this group moving forward?
To say it again, like the Reds could have had prime Joey Votto in this series and they still wouldn't have been the favorite against the Dodgers. But like, how does Nick Lodolo look at this series? How does Andrew Abbott look at this series? What their perspective was, they're 2 of the best players on the team and they didn't get to be a part of it in the way they should have been. And that's nobody's fault. The people at fault is the 2025 Reds as a whole, who didn't win enough games until the final game of the season. So they had to use Lodolo out of the bullpen on game 162. So they couldn't line Andrew Abbott up in the ideal way. But these guys say, like, these guys know that they're kind of the core of the team. Like they know that. And that's a part of their perspective on how they view the playoffs. When I was talking to Nick Lodolo about the rotation in the postseason, here's what he said.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we would love to see for sure. The way it worked out last year, just the last game and stuff. So we lined up a little bit differently and all that. But nonetheless, it was a good experience. But that's, I think, how you'd like to draw it up. So, if we could get that into a series, I'd feel pretty dang good. Even, like I said, whoever else was in the rotation too, we got good arms, man. We're deep. So just want to, get back there and have that chance again.
And now they have to win more games in the regular season so they can build for these guys to have that opportunity.
All right, that's big picture, and that's the Dodgers series. But let's spin forward now. Let's look forward, Chaz. A forward-thinking show, Power Stacks is. So we're going to do that right now. Break down the rotation one player at a time. We'll do that. So we mentioned on the previous show we did Hunter Green. In 2025, Green made the fewest starts of his 4-year career. As you just said, health is always going to be key, and with that, it seems likely – I think likely is a good word, likely that there's a next step for Hunter Green this season if he can stay healthy. Let's start with Nick Lodolo because like Green, 4 seasons in now, but unlike Green, last year was his best season across the board. Starts, innings, ERA, strikeouts, health. It was all there for Nick Lodolo in 2025. And the storyline with Lodolo has been not only that, that season is what it was. He felt it before that season started because he said it was the first time I had really an off season and a spring training where I was healthy and I could start the year healthy. Is he in that place again this year health-wise? And what else did you learn about Lodolo so far that sets him up for this year?
He's even looked like he's filled out some and become even more athletic. And it's a reminder that from basically like 2023 to 2025, he couldn't train in the offseason because there was the calf stuff. There was always something with Lodolo that was preventing him from really getting a rhythm and true momentum as a starting pitcher. And that all clicked for him in 2025, aside from one blister issue, which is something he has to clean up.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the weaknesses in Lodolo's game, and maybe I'll talk with him about this later in the spring. I mean, he's done some stuff to try to correct that. But I always say with Lodolo, it's very easy to know when he's about to be dominant, because when you see him spinning that breaking ball from the left side, like there's nothing you can do. And I've talked to, hitters from opposing teams who have come to Cincinnati, and they come blown away from their experiences facing Lodolo because of what that breaking ball means. And you look at how that translated into huge games last season, a game against the Mets in July where Lodolo gives you 7 against one of the best lineups in baseball. A huge game. It's funny. It gets lost to time, but the Noelvi Marte Rob Tomer game stole the show. But that must-win game in Pittsburgh nearly was Nick Lodolo's moment, because he goes 6 1/3, 2 hits, no runs, 12 strikeouts. So Lodolo's that good, but it just feels like he never gets the recognition. Finally, he got something. Team USA really wanted him, and Lodolo turned it down because he said he wants to get in the routine and the build-up and the prep and the rhythm that he usually hasn't been able to in the spring. And that's really his focus. Like, there's no big thing he's working on. He knows he's really, really good when he's healthy and built up and strong, and just getting all that to an even additional level is what he's not even working on, but just how he's approaching this spring.
2 things. What kind of a sense did you get from Lodolo about that decision to not pursue the WBC or accept that invitation? Was that as tough for him as maybe it is for some guys? Did he give you any indication that was the case? And then in the tease we mentioned, he ran this up the ladder, and it ran through Terry Francona. How did that conversation go?
Nick said that, like, every kid wants to play in the World Baseball Classic. Every adult wants to play in the World Baseball Classic. But when I talked about Lodolo kind of getting that real prep and build up and base under him for the season, as a guy who hasn't been able to have full off seasons for most of his career, that's something he valued. And kind of the money quote was, Francona told him, "If you're dying to do it, I'll support you. I'm just worried. I've seen guys come back from it and be impacted by that experience of having to, spin your best breaking ball on March 10th before you've got a bunch of spring training starts under your belt." And the best part was Francona said, "I want you to be wealthy as hell. Maybe there'll be a day down the road where you've got 50 million in the bank, then go ahead and do it." And the subtext there is, though, like, people don't talk about Lodolo enough. He very well could be making $50 to $100 million in a couple of years. He's that talent, and the expectation is that he's going to be at that point as long as he stays healthy. But again, he stayed healthy in 25, and he's much stronger to do it again entering 26.
I can hear Tito in my head saying that, but with all sincerity, we chuckle about it, but I know he's seen that. I know he feels that about Nick Lodolo, and I think that's the right thing to say to a player in Lodolo's position, working through decisions like this. And we keep talking about the window for the Reds, and everybody focuses the window on Elly De La Cruz and how long is he going to be here, and you have to maximize that window while he's here and playing well. This rotation coming together the way that it is the other massive pillar of whatever window the Reds have right now. And the depth that it has, indicates what everybody wants. You want to find a way to keep the window open. You can keep it open with pitching, but the guys we're talking about right now, they are pillars of the Reds' window and chance to win. So
real quick, Brian, on that point, like, we're glowing talking about the rotation right now. And frankly, that's deserved. They ranked 5th in baseball in WAR last year, and that was with Hunter missing half the season, Lauder missing the whole season. It wasn't a real year from Chase Burns in terms of how they managed him and then how he went to the bullpen. And you think all these guys are going to be better. And now, like, we'll spend the rest of the spring talking about how is this outfield going to fit together? Do they have a number 2 hitter? Like, there are real flaws and concerns on this team, but I don't think, again, health is the one thing. But aside from health, there's no way you can look at this rotation and say it's not great. I talked to Hunter, I talked to all these guys, but look at Hunter, Lodolo, and Abbott. Like, there's no big thing they're working on this spring. They didn't have to add a pitch. They didn't have to change their approach. They didn't have to, completely reorient the way they attack hitters. There is all of the confidence in the world between coaches within themselves that what they do works. I mean, what they do works. That's a fact.
Well,
And these guys are kind of entering their prime. When you look at it that way, their prime is right now.
right, another lefty now. We move on from Lodolo to Andrew Abbott. An all-star season, as you said, for Abbott. Most of the season, he's rolling out there every 5 days with a sub-2 ERA. Still finished, even as he had some games in the second half that weren't the same type of game that he had in the first half. Still finished sub-3 on the season. 166 innings and change for Andrew Abbott. And I think when we talked about it earlier, I think I described it as he's carrying himself as an all-star now already, even in the offseason when we see him at Reds Fest and I'm sure as he gets to Arizona in spring training. What's we say Hunter Green has his whiteboard and his goals. I don't know that Andrew Abbott does that, but what would you put on the Andrew Abbott board preseason for 2026?
I mean, kind of going off what I just said, you want to know the thing Andrew's working on this spring? I mean, it's like his cutter, which is his fifth pitch, and like using his changeup more to righties or lefties instead of using it more to righties or something like that. Like, he is, and I mean this in a good way, so in the weeds with what he is doing. We've said this about Andrew since he was a prospect. It's wise beyond your years stuff. It's old soul stuff. It's 35-year-old stuff. And he's a 35-year-old who's like 27. And we told this story in depth last year, how the story of Abbott's 2025 was the fact that in 2023 and 4, he just ran out of gas and kind of fell off down the stretch of the season. And he completely changed his body last year and set himself up to go the whole season. I mean, he looks not as drastic, but like slightly better this year. So that's another step in the right direction. It's slightly better than he did last year because he's already made that huge leap. Like, just like Lodolo and Hunter, there's no big thing for Andrew. And I think the expectation is, especially because he's a guy who, particularly with his arm, has always been healthy, knock on wood, who you just expect another really good year from in 2026.
How is it perceived within the Reds staff and organization? To what level do they believe that having two really good left-handed starters an advantage? Every team wants one, and not everybody has not everybody has that. To have two quality left-handed starters, how is that perceived within the guys you've talked to in the front office and in the staff?
The way I look at it is left, right. Tito even said this today, like, you don't really, how I look at it is just how different the profiles are. Like, to me, it's not the extremes of left, right. It's the extremes of, and I'll use these guys as like archetypes. They're not all the way there yet, but like, if you have to face Chase Burns one day and you have to face Rhett Lauder the next day, like, those are two incredibly different experiences. And it's the jarring nature of that messes with you. So, Hunter, Nick, and Abbott take the hand they throw with out of it. Hunter is this elite velocity swing and miss guy who throws hard. Lodolo has that spinning breaking ball and a very unique arm action with the path he takes coming from the left side horizontally. He could be thrown with the right hand, and that's still very different than what you're getting from Hunter. And then Abbott, it's beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, filling up the zone with pitches on. And he uses all four quadrants with 4 or 5 pitches, in a way that's uncommon. And none of those pitches might be elite, but they're all good. And so it's different. And I think that difference between each guy is the most important thing.
And we saw it last year. I think we continue to see it. Some of these guys, you spend that much time together. They're close with each other. They're good teammates, good friends, however you want to frame it. But the competition is there. Everybody sees everybody else. And it's cliche to hear a manager or a coach talk about competition, making people better. Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, Hunter Green, they want to compete with whoever the guy in the locker next to him and the guy in the batter's box facing them. They will compete. Competition has been good for this group, I think, so far. So that's 1, 2, 3. And man, the number of times that you've gone to spring training and, for the Reds in the last 25 years of this franchise, I think you feel about as good as 1, 2, 3 as you can at this point with those players we've talked about already. So then you arrive at Brady Singer, who was certainly, when you talked about the paths chosen by the front office to address how to make the team better, if you trade from your position of strength, I think Brady Singer would have been certainly included in some of those conversations to move. It didn't happen. He's still here, and Brady Singer is the ultimate back of the baseball card guy. You're going to get, what he's always done, you're going to get it. And the Reds got it last year in his first season with the Reds, 32 starts, almost 170 innings, and that's always been key. He's going to give innings, and the trickle-down effect from giving innings and competing the way he does makes the entire staff better. Where is he right now?
I mean, he ranks in the top 35 in WAR among starting pitchers in MLB last year. He gets a lot of that value in the aggregate, but in that way, like he's the insurance for, a couple guys in Hunter and Lodolo especially, who have had injuries pop up at different points of his career. Like, I remember entering 2025, I was told at the very start of that offseason, this team's biggest need is a guy who we can count on to make 30 starts. Look at what these guys get paid around the league right now. And there's tangible value in that. In the era we live in where pitching injuries have never been higher. And your innings reflect a certain level of value. And I think you kind of overlook the fact too that Brady Singer was a first-round pick. The slider's real. He's got talents. He can also use that durability. Like, what he didn't get enough credit for last year was in August, he was struggling. And he had, I believe, some sort of arm fatigue. Like, it was a thing, like not an injury, but like a thing, soreness that he was dealing with. And he found a way to just push through that and then have his best stretch of the season and carry the torch as the best guy in the rotation during the dog days of the year. And that's a skill. I think he's perfect as a number 4. If he's your number 3, that might be a little rich. He'll probably get paid like a number 2 or a number 3 when he hits free agency next year, just because how much teams around the league will value those innings. But Singer is a guy who you feel great about as your 4. Oh, and then, by the way, could be passed pretty quickly by Chase Burns or Rhett Lauder and end up as the number 5 in this team's rotation. And it's a guy who would start in the playoffs for a lot of very good teams when you look at weak spots and rotations on other teams.
For all the uncertainty that greets a big league manager every day when he shows up at the ballpark, managers take great comfort in pitchers like Brady Singer, who you know what you're going to get, and you don't expect him to dominate. He's every once in a while he's going to, but he's going to take the ball, he's going to give innings, he's going to give you the good old chance to win. He did that in his first season with the Reds. I think he's the perfect, as you said, in the 4th spot, the perfect guy to have back in that spot in this rotation with a young staff. We learned a lot about Brady Singer and his influence on younger players and pitchers last year. That was good as well. So that's a good spot for him and a good spot for the Reds. Quick break to remind you that you can reach us at powerstackspod@gmail.com, powerstackspod@gmail.com. There it is on the screen if you're on the YouTube. Shoot us some thoughts, shoot us some questions. Also, we continue to roll out the welcome mat for partners for this season. If you have a business, if you know of someone who does, hit us up on the email. We'd like to partner with you, make you a part of this show, as we are just now gaining some steam in spring training and steaming towards opening day in Cincinnati. All kinds of options, all kinds of things we can do. We'd love to have you along for that. We're deep into Charlie's notebook now to finish this conversation with the most intriguing, I think, interesting part of the conversation about the Reds rotation, and that is the battle for the 5th spot. Now, based on last season, everybody wants to right away say, it's Chase Burns. But this decision, won't just be based on last season. And last season, we saw Chase Burns, but we didn't see Rhett Lauder. We didn't see Brandon Williamson. So how do you handicap the race for this spot early in the spring with those three names on the board?
My roster projection starts with Chase Burns. Like I said earlier, I think he's as talented as Hunter Green. Like I rewatched, and not to keep going back to the Dodgers series, but I rewatched that about a week or two ago. And man, Burns out of the bullpen, like that's just elite stuff combined with the poise and confidence of a guy who knows that he's really good. And there was a scene, it was on this field right behind me yesterday where it was Burns, Lauder, Williamson, back to back throwing loud BPs. And man, the things people were saying about Burns, it was like there was a pitch he threw, he not fanned because Benson watched a curveball for strike 3. And Benson said it, and then Steer said it in the dugout, like, well, he has a curveball now? And that's a reminder, he's still so young, he's still so early in this. Like, the thing for Burns this year is just going to be the rhythm of the season combined with, and we told these stories over the years with Green and Lodolo and Abbott, the routine that Burns is going to learn he has to use. Like, that's something you can only learn how to do on the fly in the big leagues. So he'll go through that, and with that will come some highs and lows. But, I mean, Terry Francona was raving about him too today. He said he looks like he belongs. With an arm like that, it happens fast. And it's elite stuff and a presence that impresses everybody. And Burns has high hopes for what he could do this year too. Here's my conversation with Chase Burns.
Getting ready and for the mindset of like playing 162 games. It's a lot. Got to see a little bit this year, so it's a grind for sure, but it's all fun.
What do you feel like you can take from last year and build on that heading into 2026?
Yeah. Starting out in the bigs, I hope, stay healthy. I had a quick stint when I was, had some soreness, stuff like that. So just being ready for that, being ready mentally to play 162 games and, using last year is kind of get my feet wet, really doing some damage this year and trying to help the team out.
How do you prepare to throw 200 innings or whatever for the first time?
I don't know. Honestly, yeah. I'm still trying to figure that out, on the advice, my still couple of years of playing professional baseball, so I'm gonna learn as I go and be like a sponge, try to take in as much information from the older guys and just go out there and play.
You clearly showed something last year. How high are your expectations entering this year?
They're huge. I set very high standards for myself. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me and my standards, but I just want to help the team win any way I can.
So this has been a very positive show, and we'll talk a lot about the questions in the lineup and the depth and all this stuff. I'm not projecting. I'm around like 85 to 88 wins for the Reds right now. But this rotation is worth gushing over. And for Green, Lodolo, and Abbott, as I said, I don't think aside from health, there's a counter argument. I don't think I was gushing above and beyond about any of them. I think that's just a fact of where those guys are. I will use my gushing points on Chase Burns. He's the guy I am highest on over expectation. Again, I think the expectations for Green, Lodolo, and Abbott are already that high, but not to call it irrational because I think it's rational. But the irrational hope, if there's any of that you take from this show in terms of a player evaluation standpoint, it's my view of Chase Burns because he's the one who's shown the least. He hasn't shown a thing really over a full season in terms of being able to do it as a full-time starting pitcher. But I think he's going to do it really well. And I'm using my irrational podcast pool of resources into the Chase Burns pot.
I heard him say the words, do some damage. You like to hear that. And I agree with you on the hype. And I think in terms of the battle for the fifth spot, how could you not? I said we all want to pencil Chase Burns in. We want to pencil him in because we see, what our eyes tell us, but we also want to pencil him in because he's not coming off of an injury. He did compete and pitch and get experience last year. No matter where Rhett Lauder and Brandon Williamson start, they're starting a couple of steps behind because they're coming off injury and didn't have the same, year that Chase Burns had a year ago. So I'm not in Arizona right now, but if I had some money, I'd say based on what you're telling me and what we saw last season, I think number 5 starts with Chase Burns, or you start with finding a way to make him that first option, and then you go from there. But here you are again with depth. That word is depth, and that's good for the Reds. So how does it, where do you start with the other two? You want to pick up with Louder first, or you want to go Williamson and discussing the other two candidates for the 5th spot?
Let's go Louder. And here I think ties back to a point we made early on this show. Like, why didn't they trade a starter? Because you already had, we were thinking 6, but I think Williamson's earned his way into this conversation too as a 7th. Well, Louder and Williamson having missed a full year, I think will have to manage their innings at different points this season.
Right.
And in the fact that starting pitching injuries were at an all-time high in baseball. Francona even said about Williamson specifically, but I think it applies to Louder as well. Like, just enjoy being out there competing, which you haven't been able to do because you've been hurt. Don't go out there and feel like you have to make the team today, and try to wow us in these first days of camp. So that's a good mindset for them to take. Personally, I think there's nothing wrong with having them open the year in AAA. They don't need their feet to get their feet wet because they were able to pitch at full speed in October and get some reps that way. But the Reds need to value depth because that's what every team's doing. And when your depth starts with a top 10 pick with a 1.17 ERA, that's a good place to be. Louder, watching him pitch yesterday, just a nice, solid first live of camp for a young guy. We all know what Rhett does. Movement, location, command, 4 pitches, comfort, some of that Abbott style, and can beat you with some stuff too. And it was just like a normal camp day for Louder yesterday. But in general, with everything we've seen from him and his athletic makeup and what he brings to the table, expectations for Louder haven't changed, even though he just missed a full season.
You wrote about Hunter Green on day 1 on the chalkboard, Charlie's chalkboard. Since then, you have chosen to write about Brandon Williamson. Maybe sooner than some people expected you to select Brandon Williamson as the focal point of Charlie's chalkboard. Why did you make that decision? Where is this story right now?
Talking about editorial judgment. I love it.
That's right.
No, so I wasn't planning to write about Williamson. So I color code my stories, and Williamson was a yellow, not a green. My story ideas, Williamson was a yellow, not a green. And then I talked to him.
I'm just going to let that go for right now. We'll revisit that another time. You color code everything.
All right, Williamson. Really, really, really interesting. Even if he doesn't make the team, like when you look at pitching and development and the whole injuries play and who you are and the paths you take, just really interesting, even though he's not the biggest name, not one of the 20 biggest names in the organization. Let's go through Brandon Williamson's career very quickly. In 2021, he had the, I believe, 5th best strikeout rate in all of minor league baseball. He has beaten guys. He is a top 100 prospect. The Reds love that. So they make him the headliner of the Jesse Winker, Eugenio Suarez trade. You're feeling great. You started a rebuild because of how much you believed in Brandon Williamson. Shoulder issue pops up with Williamson in 2022. Never quite felt right. Never quite felt like he could let it rip. The strikeout rate, I believe, pretty close to cut in half. 2023 has a tough spring, doesn't make the team, isn't pitching well in AAA. The Reds run out of pitching. Good luck, kid. We need you. And somehow Williamson figures it out with a cutter that he had never really even used that much and a slider. And all of a sudden he becomes like a Wade Miley soft contact pitcher, which he made it work. And he learned a lot about the art of pitching by doing that. And I've said this all along. Williamson was their most consistent pitcher in 2023. He kind of saved them that year. 2024, guess what pops up again? Shoulder stuff, which impacted him in 23 as well. Williamson opts. He could have got surgery. Opts not to. Rehabs, returns in on at the very start of September. I've never been more surprised by a guy being activated from the IL during my 7 years covering the Reds than Williamson when they activated him after one rehab start despite missing 5 months. It was stunning. The Reds literally had no one else to pitch. So we need you, Brandon. And his shoulder still wasn't right. And his arm slot started to drop. That put more stress on his elbow. This is September of 24. UCL blows out. Tommy John misses all of 25. But really what he has had since he had surgery has been like 18 months just to do shoulder rehab. And he's kind of finally been able to fix the shoulder. And so, I mean, I saw him yesterday and people have told me the same thing. Like, say what you want about him. His upside's not, what Chase Burns is, but this is a different Brandon Williams. And he is in a new spot. He's a new pitcher. There's a new guy wearing number 55. You'll hear Brandon talk about that here. Here's my conversation with him and how the injury shaped his development and progression. I remember in 24 when you tore the UCL, you were like, the shoulder stuff and the abbreviated rehab assignment had nothing to do with the elbow injury. Looking back, do you still believe those two things weren't connected?
The shoulder got tired and it made me drop down a little bit, and then that put the extra stress on my elbow. So I do think that the shoulder, and if it was the kind of thing that kicked off my elbow at the time, it was kind of like I didn't want to think like that. So I don't know. I definitely think my shoulder was the reason you got lower.
No one's to blame for this. You feel like you came back a little too soon?
No, I felt like it was just one of those things, man. If I wasn't pitching well at the time, I probably would have shut it down. But to be pitching the way I was, my shoulder could only hurt so much and be so wrong if my performance is this good. So if my performance went down, I'd say, well, then there's probably really something wrong. But then I could still throw the ball well, I could still hit my spots, hit my targets. It just kind of hurt. So, I mean, hindsight's 2020. If I known I'd blow my elbow out, I probably would have stopped. I was still performing. So how do you stop? I
think we all can relate to that. Like, we're feeling good. We're gonna keep. I always say you were the Reds' most consistent pitcher for most of 2023. How much kind of confidence does that give you? What you have shown you can do in the big leagues?
Yeah, I appreciate that. But I feel like I was pitching close to my floor 23 because my arm, even then, was just not what it is now. It's not what it had been in the past because my shoulder was a little achy. It led to me having to play 2 games, and it was protect mode when I would throw. So I feel like now I can get more into my save. I don't know, I can elevate my game a little more with just being able to let the ball go as far as I want and not have to protect it. I could throw, I can throw better, stuff. Just that's surely what it is. Just better stuff. Your arm feels good. You can throw better stuff.
Like I mentioned in 23, like Wade Miley isn't a great comp, but like Wade Miley throws a cutter and a slider from the left side. Like Williamson was pitching to contact, and that's not at all what he was and what he proved he could do as a prospect when he was striking out like 14 batters an inning. And for the first time since that year, his shoulder's actually right. And like, sure, everyone says they're right at this point, but like Williamson actually had the time to do the work and did the work to make his shoulder right. And then literally yesterday on this field, facing Gino in a live BP session, and he blows a fastball by him. Gino swings and misses. Williamson's sitting in the mid-90s. He was sitting 90, 91, 92 in 2023. That's a big difference. I asked, what's the biggest difference I'm going to notice? And he said velocity. And he reinforced that and built that up further and backed that up by going to a pitching lab earlier this offseason to change his rotational force and take that to another level. So, again, this is a new guy wearing number 55. I don't have him making the rotation right now. He doesn't have the upside of some of these other guys, but he has upside. And in an era where starting pitching depth, like we keep saying, has never been more important, Brandon Williamson will get his chance. He'll probably get a lot of chances. He's going to get a run at some point, a stretch where he has to take the ball, where they need him to take the ball. And he'll get a chance to show who he is and what he can really do. And Brandon's really excited to show what the new him looks like. And the Reds their ears are perked up. They're intrigued as well.
So you get the final word on this early in spring training dive on the Reds rotation. Tie a ribbon around this for me as we wrap up this part of the conversation.
Like I said earlier, nothing I said here was hyperbole, except for what I said about Chase Burns. And I believe that.
And you believe that part. All right.
But Hunter, Nick, Abbott, this is just who they are.
Yeah.
Rhett, you know what you're getting. He's that type of consistent old school pitcher. Williamson is probably the best 8th starter in baseball right now. And you're going to see a different guy. And I think that's just genuinely interesting. It's a top 5 rotation in the game. It was a top 5 rotation in the game last year. And anything that they're going to do, it's going to be led by what their rotation gives them.
Top 5 rotation in the game. Let's narrow the focus now, though, and look at that rotation in the division, in the National League Central. Said this off the top of the tees. Quick exercise for us in the spirit of the Olympics right now. We're all thinking about medals and podiums and winners and who does what. So let's look at the top 3 teams in the division, take a glance at where their rotation is projected to be, since we just covered the Reds, and just have a quick little thought on a gold and a silver and a bronze that we're awarding in February for a team's projected rotation. I said we're going to do the top 3 teams in the division, so we're not going to get to the Pirates and Cy Young winner Paul Skeens.
Who might win, but
but listen, he's on an island in Pittsburgh right now. We're going to focus on the other folks, and so let's start with the team that had the best record in baseball last year, the Brewers. What we'll notice: no Freddie Peralta, traded to the Mets. He won 17 games last year, had 200 strikeouts. No veteran lefty Jose Quintana. He's with the Rockies, 36 years old. He moves out. So you start back with the health question. And is Brandon Woodruff going to be healthy? When he's been healthy, he's been good, but only 12 starts last year. But they go Woodruff, Quinn Priester, Jacob Mizorowski, Chad Patrick, and Kyle Harrison. Quinn Priester, really good first year in Milwaukee for him as he came over. You know about the Miz in his rookie year. He made 2 playoff starts, had an ERA of 1.5. And Chad Patrick, 23 starts in his rookie season a year ago. Anything jump out at you about Milwaukee other than the fact that they always find a way to ship out star players and still win?
This is a very in the weeds nugget, but it's fascinating. So, Brian, you look at the Brewers as a good pitching development team, right? Like yeah. You know who's running that now for them? You don't know who this is. His name's Brian Conger. Brian Conger was the Reds' pitching minor league co-coordinator for the last 4 seasons. And so they actually gave him a promotion. I believe he is now the director of player development. Like, they're having him over, I believe, overseeing all of it. So, I mean, it's like a classic example of what's what it is like, not to call the Reds McVay, but like hiring Sean McVay's offensive coordinator is what the Brewers just did. They hired the Reds number 2 to be their number 1. That's a compliment to the Reds. Yep. So all that ecosystem that we feel good about with Milwaukee, that you just automatically see, they want to do it more like the Reds. And again, that's something that not a lot of people know, but knowing Brian, and I'm a big Brian Conger fan. Here we are 2 minutes talking about this guy that no one's heard of. Brian and I checked in every spring, and he told me who is going to break out that year. And every year he was right. So shout out to him. And now obviously the Brewers have that, and I think he'll do a great job there, but it's a part of the Cincinnati tree.
Yeah. And you said the Brewers want to be more like the Reds. Well, it goes full circle because the Reds took Derek Johnson from the Brewers to start this whole thing off. The other team that we're looking at is the Cubs. And their rotation projected stacks up as righty Cade Horton, lefty Matthew Boyd, Edward Cabrera, who they gave up a lot to get from the Marlins, a big trade. He figures to be better on a better team in the Cubs. So we'll see. They got Imanaga, lefty. His second season with the Cubs wasn't as good as his first, but it was still strong. And then veteran Jamison Taillon. This will be his fourth season in Chicago. He's been really consistent, but you go back, Matthew Boyd led the team last year with 14 wins, good ERA. But Cade Horton, the rookie, didn't debut until May, ended up making 22 starts, sub-3 ERA. Top to bottom, I'm thinking the Cubs right now are in the lead for the gold medal in my book.
Who's the best pitcher on that team?
That's a great question.
That's what they're missing. Like Cade Horton, really talented, but he's kind of in that Burns tier as just a splash of experience and prospect upside and pedigree. Former top 10 pick, but I think Burns has more upside. Edward Cabrera is a real talent, but at this stage is kind of a project with pieces that the Cubs host to harness in their pitching apparatus. I think Matthew Boyd, he's 35. It's funny. Matthew Boyd is the 35-year-old old soul that Andrew Abbott is at 35. So that's kind of a wash. Shota Minaga had a down season and needs to bounce back. Now the wild card, there'll be Justin Steele coming back from injury, I think at some point during the middle of the year, later in the year.
Yeah.
He's been an ace, but the lack of punch at the top of that rotation. Personally, I think the Reds have the best rotation in the division.
I think it's close. I go Cubs, Reds for silver, and the Brewers for bronze. But you could throw that out in any order and make an argument for each. But as you said earlier, I'm bullish on the Reds, on the Cincinnati Reds and their rotation and the known depth of their rotation.
Now they just got to hit, Brian.
Now
they just got to hit.
They got to hit. And so we'll see on that. There'll be more on that. Quick thought, Rate the Road Trip is something we did throughout the first season of the show from time to time. But you have, you're in Arizona. Like I said, I've enjoyed staring at the blue sky behind you for the last 55 minutes. Give me a good early camp story for Charlie Goldsmith, life on the road, doing what you do and doing it out in AZ.
So I love the Black Bear Diner. No one makes chicken sausage like they do. Very clean, and it feels healthy, even though it's chicken sausage technically, and it's fried or whatever. I get the egg white scramble with chicken sausage and avocados. I went there on Monday, my first day. I always go, but my usual waitress wasn't there. And so then I walk in today, and how you doing? It's been a while. She's like, you forgot your to-go order, because I usually get an order to go for lunch to eat that day, but I already had lunch for today, so I didn't. But she remembered that I get a to-go order. She brought the to-go iced coffee, which I wanted without even asking. It's good to feel seen, Brian, and I felt seen.
It's the little things. So I do you know this young lady's name? I hope.
That's the beauty of it. Not the beauty. It's a shame. I should know her name.
You should introduce yourself.
We've got this relationship, and we don't even know each other's names.
All right. Well, make it your goal to find out her name so that you can address her properly and thank her properly, and continue that. But it is good to be seen, and I'm thinking about you and your iced coffee and your breakfast all these cold mornings in Cincinnati while you're in Arizona. That's it for this week. That's your deep dive on the Reds rotation. So many good stories. Good stuff, Chaz. Well reported. Love the conversations. And we're going to be back. We're going to be back into 2 shows a week in the very near future. We're still going to keep you posted on all that. Check it out on Twitter. Sign up for Charlie's Chalkboard. Use the email and let us know what you think. But we're going to keep going. We're getting close. It's happening fast, and opening day in Cincinnati is just right around the corner. So our thanks to producer Kent. Thanks to you for listening and watching. Leave a comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Power Stacks.